Today, we are going to be going over the investor report that we talked about a little bit on the Friday Bean. Main things that we want to highlight are going to be Josh's introduction and some of the points that he made there, but also some of the questions that were asked during the Q&A portion towards the end, because I feel like that's where the best information is. These questions that are coming in from the investors related to things like Etsy suspensions and, just the current state of Etsy. So if you want to watch the extended version of this, we give a lot more information. That's going to be in the link up above somewhere and down below if you're curious and you want to check that out. But today I figured we would just highlight some of those key points. Let's go ahead and get started.
And good afternoon, everyone. Etsy's consolidated results, while within our guidance range, were not where we wanted them to be. GMS was just shy of $3 billion, down 3.7% from last year. Revenue grew a bit, up 0.8% to $646 million.
So I actually want to immediately highlight something here. This is the first time that I've ever seen Etsy admit that GMS is down, which that's gross merchandise sales. That's us. That's the sellers. Our money is down, right? Etsy, though, their consolidated revenue is up. We have to remember that Etsy also recently started charging $15 for new shops to join the platform, kind of putting in that barrier to entry to make it a little bit harder. Josh, later on during this webcast, he talks about, wanting to focus on sellers who have the skill or the will. Now, obviously, there are sellers who are getting deactivated right after that $15 charge is made.
Consumer wallets remain squeezed, so there's often little left after paying for food, gas, rent, and childcare. And there's significant data indicating that the largest e-commerce platforms have primarily been able to grow by selling everyday essentials at very low prices.
This is kind of important to note as well, because, a lot of sellers are like, well, I was doing so well a few months ago. I was doing so well a few years ago. And we have to think about our own spending habits as well as consumers. I don't know about you guys, but right now I'm not really buying a whole lot of frivolous type items. And we have to remember that our customers are kind of the same way. And in spring and summer especially, and this is a yearly thing, we talk about it every single year, people are saving their money. They're saving for the upcoming holidays. They're saving for vacations. They're spending more time outside, less time in front of their screens. This is why I'm such a big fan of social media marketing, because while people might not be shopping on Etsy, they are likely scrolling through social media. And that social media kind of bridges that gap and puts people into the buying mood when they would otherwise maybe not be in the buying mood.
Our key focus for 2024 is to continue to build consideration for Etsy, to help buyers think of us more often by making it easier to find the best stuff, driving association that there are great deals on Etsy, and making shopping on Etsy more convenient.
Just a couple things here. You might not have noticed in that little first section, something that they're going to be putting into beta soon. Right here, gift mode, which we already have, and loyalty program. So
I think they're going to be pushing a lot more into the gift mode as the year goes on, especially Q3, Q4.
Yeah.
Their big goal is to try to get more reshoppers, people who are coming back to the platform after making a purchase. And I think the loyalty program is probably a way to incentivize the shoppers to actually come back. Another couple of things that we should be kind of paying attention to here: machine learning investments, reliability, making Etsy more convenient. One of the things that he'll talk about it is making it easier for the shopper to get from point A to point B, from the point that they get on the website and search for what they're actually looking for to the point that they actually make the purchase. And machine learning, I think, is where they're going to be putting a lot of that in there. That way, when you go and you search, you're not getting an entire page full of the exact same junk over and over and over and over again. You get relative stuff to the search you're actually searching for, but you're not getting everything that looks exactly the same, which is currently a problem that they're trying to deal with.
This is really a time that we need to start reevaluating our images. We need to reevaluate our SEO strategies. We need to reevaluate how unique our products are. So making sure that we're not all creating the exact same quotes on t-shirts and things like that, and really differentiating ourselves. Because something else that's going to come later on is he talks a little bit about how good reviews and positive buyer experiences are also playing into the algorithm, which they always have through our customer and marketplace experience score and our listing quality scores. But the fact that he outlined it, that tells me that what they're really going to be focusing on in 2024 and 2025 is enhancing the actual shopper experience to make it easier for shoppers, but also to make sure that shoppers are finding the very, very best shops. And this doesn't necessarily mean that our newbies are at a disadvantage. It just means that the expectations that Etsy's placing on us to make sure that our photos are great, our SEO is great, our products are concise, our descriptions are concise, that all of those things are good to go from the moment that an item is listed.
Notice I say search and listing quality. They're attempting to find a way to put better listings in front of the shopper's eyes and hopefully limit some of the cruddier looking listings from being out there.
It says the good stuff.
Yeah, the good stuff. Highlighting and promoting great value.
We're pleased to report that Etsy's total site-wide gifting GMS in the first quarter grew in the low single digits year over year, significantly outpacing our site-wide performance and data we're tracking for select U.S. online gifting-focused peers, who all saw year-over-year declines.
This is kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy because, the gifting GMS, gross merchandise sales, those are going to be up because Etsy invested a bunch of money into a Super Bowl ad. Drew Barrymore doing some of their, marketing campaigns for Gift Mode. She's their chief gifting officer. They have been putting forth a lot of effort into marketing Gift Mode. Therefore, yes, we are going to see more popularity of Gift Mode. What I'm curious about is how that's going to maintain through key gift-giving holidays. So, the holiday season, what I really anticipate is that right now, while things are slow, Etsy's going to be making improvements to Gift Mode. They're going to be really polishing it up, which we tend to see the most testing taking place in spring and summer on Etsy. That's when they start, tinkering with things to get it ready.
Traffic's down and it's not as much of a risk.
Exactly. And then when things start to pick up, usually around end of August, September, and then especially October and November, that's when we start to really see the benefits of the changes that they've made. So definitely keep an eye out for any educational material that Etsy starts posting around, Q4, because this is when they're really going to begin teaching us anything that's relevant to Gift Mode that we need to know in order to get our own shops ready for the holidays, aside from the obvious, which is making sure that you have fantastic photos, great SEO, and that, your listings are up to par with things like Etsy's Ultimate Guide to Search.
Photos will also become more important. He'll talk about that here in a little bit.
Yeah.
We've got a robust roadmap for Gift Mode to improve the experience and get more buyers into the funnel. From recently optimized gift teasers to additional giftee profiles, reminders, video and audio message capabilities, and new occasion pages, and much more.
So I really like this. If it's something that we already have, we already have Gift Mode, Etsy optimizing it even further is doing nothing but helping us as the sellers, right?
Yeah.
So having teasers, I don't know exactly what that entails, but I believe that they've actually already executed it. I think I saw something about it. You're also going to be able to have your buyers leave little video messages that go with their gifts. I think that that's really fun. And highlighting those gift-giving occasions. That way, people who are coming to the platform to shop for gifts have it right on their dashboards that, it's directing them to a landing page of gifts related to that, which Etsy's already kind of done, but they're just further finding ways to highlight these new features that are going to give them a more curated experience. We're not saying that Gift Mode is making up a big percentage of the shopping taking place on Etsy. Most people, I'm going to assume when they come to Etsy, they have an idea of what they want to buy. They know that they want to buy a specific type of item, and they're still going to rely heavily on keyword searches for those items. They're going to go and type into the search bar when they have an idea of what they want. But for the shoppers who don't know what they want, but they have someone in mind to buy for, I think that Gift Mode is a really cool tool it's just not great so far. In our own tests and experiences, I haven't really found a lot of benefit to using it. And I really hope that they enhance it and continue working on it, because I do think it's a cool idea. I think that it's just very far from being useful.
I could see it be useful if like you truly don't know what you want and you're just clicking around.
We're focused on creating cleaner shopping aisles for buyers. All too often when you visit Etsy, your search is cluttered, showing you too many items that feel very similar, increasing cognitive load while failing to highlight the incredible diversity that is a towering strength for Etsy. In addition, you might not be clear as to why each of these items belong on Etsy. For example, which are handmade by the seller themselves, which are designed by the seller but produced in close collaboration with a production partner, and or which are personalized and customized by the seller. The great news about this challenge is that large language models and Gen AI techniques provide so much opportunity for Etsy to better understand both the shopping mission you're on, as well as our inventory, and show you the best stuff in ways we couldn't have imagined just a few years ago. This year, we're going on the offense in an even bigger way to make sure Etsy lives up to our promise from an inventory and quality perspective along these 4 key focus areas. First, we're doing more than ever to suppress and remove listings that violate our policies. And advances in...
So this is one that Mark and I have spent a lot of time with, and it's the one that concerns you guys the most.
Yes.
Suppress and remove listings that violate Etsy's policies. So as you guys probably already know, we had around 300 sellers with suspended shops send us emails. And initially, our plan was to get a hold of Etsy, which I was able to do. And their head of customer support told me that if I could get that list to him, they would reevaluate those shops. We went over those shops, and what we found was that a majority of them had broken legitimate rules.
A large portion, roughly, if not more than half. We can see why Etsy also is having to leverage language models in order to be able to help deal with this problem. Researching individual shops to figure out who is and who isn't breaking the rules is an astronomical effort. And when you're talking in the realm of 1 million plus sellers, you know, they speculate, what was it, 7 to 9 million
9 million.
sellers.
Yeah, 9 million.
That's a lot to go through. There aren't enough human beings in their company to be able to do something like that.
No.
They would have to hire hundreds of thousands of people to do that.
Yeah, some of these cases, I mean, they took us over an hour to get through.
Some of them I had to investigate individually for well over an hour, including back and forth communication and whatnot. But if you notice, these points are in the same realm as him talking about using AI to improve the shopping experience. It's not necessarily just helping the buyer, it's also helping the platform prevent people who shouldn't be selling on the platform from selling on the platform, which it's going to have its hiccups. However, hopefully it should reduce some of the workload from Etsy's customer service and get them back to doing things like supporting you, who are the people who aren't doing something wrong.
Right. And I understand it's very frustrating because we did have a lot of sellers who were legitimate, who had their shops deactivated, and we were able to get a lot of their shops back for them through that, you know, communication that we had with Etsy.
But unfortunately, a large quantity of them were doing something wrong. Not always a huge blatant, like, oh, they were selling Disney stuff. Not all of them were like that. Some of them were, but most of them were small mistakes, whether it was a clerical error or they had 2 shops with the same listing in both shops, or a bunch of the same listings with the same photos and the same prices and the same, like they just had duplicate shops and didn't think that that was wrong. We had that happen several times. There's a ton of different reasons why sellers get shut down, but the plain and simple truth is if you follow their rules and policies, your chances of getting shut down are very slim.
Right. It's a lot of it's little things, you know, oh, I had like a 48-cent overdue bill that I didn't notice.
Yeah, I let it go for 4 months. And while that seems negligible to you, to a computer who is just regulating using AI, you're breaking a rule. So and of course, entirely speculation across the board here. I think that whatever system they're using to regulate their users is just regulating them across the board fair without a whole lot of leniency, which makes sense. That's exactly how a computer would do it. It would just say, here's the rule, not being followed. bye-bye shop. So, I mean, the takeaway with this is follow the rules, do what you're supposed to do, and you'll probably be okay.
I mean, it will happen. There will be sellers who get deactivated
Yes.
wrongfully. They will submit appeals. Those appeals likely will get denied. It is a mess. There are sellers that it's happening to. However, every time you see these cases, posted online, oh, my shop got deactivated for no reason.
There's like a 50-60% chance that they did something wrong.
Right.
The problem is a lot louder than it actually is. There are a couple cases, but really, as far as we can tell from again, it's not enough. You could call this anecdotal. It's not enough to be scientifically conclusive. However, in our own investigation with shops that were submitted to us by people's own free will, we've found that more than often than not, people were doing something wrong.
It sucks for those of you who are doing everything right. Like, we are fighting for you.
Absolutely.
I sent a huge list of requests to the head of Etsy customer support in our communication. But to start, the best way to stay safe is to reread those policies and make sure you're following them.
In the first quarter, we removed about 115% more listings for violating our handmade policy than in the prior year.
So that's interesting. Just how much they're removing, because we constantly hear sellers say, oh, Etsy's never going to remove drop shippers. They're making money off of them, which
sounds like they're up 115%.
Right. And I know it's hard to believe that, because right now when you shop for, especially in home decor and jewelry, you try to shop for something and almost always you get something that you've definitely seen on Amazon or Wayfair or somewhere else. It does give a little glimpse into how much they actually are doing. Granted, some of those are by mistake, in error, shops that don't deserve to be deactivated.
But as we said before, less often than what their people make it out to be.
Yeah.
Buyer views of listings that violate our handmade policy are now just a few percentage points of total listing views. Our improved enforcement capabilities have resulted in the cumulative removal of millions of listings and tens of thousands of active sellers. While there's a strong replacement factor to fill in for any removal of seller listings on our marketplace, we estimate that the heightened level of takedowns we've initiated over the last 6 to 9 months has represented about a 50 basis point headwind to our annualized GMS. We see this as a very important...
Did you guys catch that?
Yeah, where they caught and replaced audio. I do think it's happening less. I will say that. I do think that people are seeing stuff that shouldn't be on Etsy less than they were before. However, literally everything that I've searched on Etsy in the last several months, I've had to Google reverse image search, and the majority of things turn out to be things that aren't things that should be on Etsy. So I don't believe that.
Important investment in our future, with significant progress made, but still more to do to keep making Etsy different and special and even more Etsy.
Yes.
Second, we need to elevate listings that represent the best of Etsy. Over the past several years, we've dramatically improved our search relevance, ensuring that buyers can more easily find what they're looking for. We believe there's a huge opportunity to build on this work by factoring attributes such as the quality of the listing and photography, shipping price and reliability, and customer reviews into our organic search algorithms.
These are the parts that we need to be listening to. These are things that are going to contribute to you being found in search. Good photos, good reviews, staying true to your shipping times, not shipping late.
They also have never specifically made a point as to them pushing listings that have better photos.
Yes.
Now, he didn't really say a whole lot when it comes to that. However, I would assume that in the near future, probably Q3, Q4, when they start working on their gift mode improvements, that they're going to begin including something that can read into images to be able to identify people who are taking and editing good images to put them in front of customers instead of the people who just slap it on their kitchen counter and take a picture of it. Speculation, but this is the first time that I've heard them talk specifically about pushing listings that have higher quality photos.
Yeah, and for those of you who have physical products that you're photographing yourself, I'll go ahead and leave a link down below to Christina Nicole's channel.
She's the best.
She's amazing. She's a product photography coach who teaches handmade sellers and makers how to photograph their product with the camera that they already have, like your camera phone. phone. One of the things that she teaches is that you don't have to have an expensive camera or photography setup to get amazing photos. So
Which is true.
definitely, oh yeah, definitely go subscribe to her channel down below if you want to start working on that in time for the holiday season.
And the third and fourth items on this slide, curation and organization, work together to do an even better job showing the newest and best merchandise available from sellers on Etsy.
So this is really on Etsy's side. Their home pages, how they create their menus and curation, basically making things easier for
More comfortable.
exactly for shoppers to navigate.
We believe that supporting small business and shopping unique goods are our strongest levers to get buyers to think of Etsy more often.
Something here that's important to highlight is that for a long time, Etsy wasn't really utilizing their keep commerce human slogan that they've had from the beginning. And you guys probably know, if you've been following us for a while, in August, we did our hashtag keep Etsy human movement because we were fighting back against this kind of robotic customer service treatment and deactivations and the lack of human feel that Etsy had due to drop shipped items. There were a lot of issues that Keep Etsy Human was tackling. I dare say that Etsy heard our mission, not that this is directly tied to that, but we did see several positive actions that took place directly after our Keep Etsy Human movement. And, you know, we got some news and media coverage. It was pretty cool. But we did start seeing small actions from Etsy for a while. And then it started to kind of die off. But now we're kind of starting to see it again, where Etsy's really showcasing some of the sellers as opposed to just having these public celebrity heads that are representing the company like Drew Barrymore, which is great. That's super cool. But I'm more inspired by seeing the sellers who are actually creating the products. So the fact that Etsy is returning back to keep commerce human, that is something huge to highlight here. And I'm really hoping that this is something that they start leaning further into so that they can begin restoring some of the initial brand messages that Etsy, you know, what we know Etsy for.
We're planning to be quite loud with this message, reestablishing our point of differentiation in clear and compelling ways.
Most of the details, like we said at the beginning, took place during the Q&A portion of this little webcast that they did. So if you end up deciding to go through and watch this entire thing, make sure that you make it to that endpoint, because this is really where a lot of the value is. But I think that some of the investor questions, they are shining a light on some of the things that we are all asking ourselves. So we'll go ahead and highlight some of the questions that we feel were most important.
I just wanted to ask you about the competitive environment. It seems like the Chinese competitors started becoming a little bit more aggressive around Q2 of last year. So as we start lapping that, do you anticipate maybe a more favorable, maybe a little bit more stable competitive backdrop?
She's asking about platforms like Temu, for example, platforms that are cheaper and that are taking traffic away from Etsy sellers.
Which we know for sure is happening. 100%.
Oh, of course. I think that once people buy something on a site like Temu, they realize like, oh, this is just like wish.com.
Trash,
right. This is just junk. But they have to make that first purchase in order to realize, okay, this is crap. Or maybe a couple purchases before they realize, okay, everything from the site is kind of crap.
It's possible. I think what we've been saying all along is that we think that the Chinese competitors are more a symptom than a root cause. I think what we're observing again and again, both at Etsy and what we read in the commentary from so many others in our space, is that consumers feel really pressured. In spite of what we're seeing about a generally healthy economy, consumers feel really pressured. And so they are seeking value in deep discounts and deep promotions. And so, yes, the Chinese competitors are offering that, but, you know, Amazon and Walmart are too. But I think the root cause of consumers feeling a ton of pressure and therefore seeking deep discounts will remain regardless of what the Chinese players do. Our focus in that is not to chase them to the bottom, is not to try to be the very cheapest place to buy things. It's to make Etsy more Etsy. It's to lean into what makes Etsy different and special. And we talked a lot about that on the call. I'm incredibly excited about the all the initiatives we have going to really elevate the very best of Etsy, suppress the things that are not the best of Etsy, and make the aisles easier to shop, so people can see the wonderful products that we have on offer. And the more that they find really, really cheap and really disposable things, I think the more they will crave an alternative to that. And we're bound and determined to use this moment to get even stronger as that alternative.
I really like that. I like that he's doubling down on creating the aisles for shopping. I don't know what all that's, I mean, obviously we have gift mode and all the other initiatives, but I'm excited to see where they take that. You know, pure speculation. But he was also talking earlier about how it's harder to identify right now on Etsy what things are made with production partners, what things are made by hand, what things are outsourced. And I'm wondering if maybe that's going to be a form of categorization as well, that you can filter down listings. Like if you don't want something made with a production partner, maybe you can click that off. We'll see. 100% speculation. He hasn't said anything like that, but I'm glad that he's confident and not just trying to push ways to get sellers to decrease their prices and push sales and do all of these things to drag traffic from competitors who really, when you think about it, Temu's not a competitor to Etsy.
No.
Amazon is not a competitor. Well, I mean, they are in the handmade space, but really Amazon, Walmart, Target, these people aren't competitors to Etsy. They're not handmade producers. That's not, again, what Etsy is for. Etsy isn't for the cheapest garbage that you can buy online. Etsy is for handmade pieces of art that you can't get anywhere else. And I like that at the very least, he's doubling down that like these people really aren't our competition. While they're a symptom of the problem, they're not the cause.
So the question is about the implication that GMS improves as you move through the year. And I know that's not what you're saying for Q2, but upon what kind of macro change is that predicated, if any?
I am very excited about the initiatives the team is working on this year. I think the things we've talked about with gifting, getting even more known as the place for gifting, the things we've talked about with quality, really leaning into the differentiation of Etsy. There's a lot of really good work going, and that work stacks. So it is our current expectation that more likely than not, we would grow in the second half of the year as a result of that.
Obviously scrolling through social media, everybody gets stuck on a product that they see every once in a while. Like, wow, that's really cool. There are ways to make advertising entertaining and engaging. And I'm hoping that they're researching ways, and it sounds like they are, to make it more engaging than just hopping on the site and searching for what you're looking for, actually finding avenues of getting someone from the front page to a listing that maybe they weren't there to get.
Yeah. And a lot of this comes down to, you know, what they're currently seeing is that Etsy sales are down, which Etsy sales are always down in spring and summer. But obviously with the economic climate, things are really, really bad right now. And they're predicting that Q2 is going to be the same. So we're probably going to have a very slow summer. But his hope is that with all the initiatives and the marketing and the gift mode, that Q3 and Q4 are going to be significantly better. So these are things that we as the sellers all need to be aware of, that right now things are slow, and they're probably going to be slow for a few more months. But we can, you know, always be looking for ways to push our own marketing, utilizing social media marketing, and you know, trying to push some of that traffic to our stores directly.
And they clearly understand that bolstering public opinion, both of the buyer and the seller, is important here. They see that the problem is the opinion of Etsy. They don't speak on that very heavily. Obviously, they're speaking to their investors. They can't say people don't think Etsy's handmade that much anymore. Clearly, Etsy's still very, very much handmade. Sometimes it can be harder than others, but he clearly understands that the situation needs to flip the opinion of Etsy more positive in the public space. And the way that he can do that is by making both the sellers and the buyers have a better perception of the platform. And he, again, seems pretty hopeful that he can do that.
Something that Rachel called out was positive friction with sellers with this incremental fee. And it's been, I think, 12 quarters in a row that your sellers have been outgrowing your buyers. Is that making it tougher for search to improve? And would you rather see a narrowing of that gap?
Yeah, that's such a good question, Laura. So yes, we have been saying for quite some time that we have quite a lot of sellers and quite a lot of inventory, and we want to make sure that we have enough demand to match supply. And so particularly seeing low effort sellers come on the platform, sellers that may not have the skill or the will, is more data we have to process, more, hand-holding we've got to give to folks. And so having a group of sellers that have higher skill and higher will, these are the sellers that I think are most likely to succeed on the platform anyway.
So this is important. He is specifically saying that for one, there are more sellers than what there are buyers.
Which has been the case for years now.
12 quarters.
Yeah.
And what they're trying to do is eliminate the clutter from the sellers who aren't willing to put in the work. And this is a good thing for everybody who's working really hard. For everybody who is watching videos about how to upload 100 listings a day, how to make as many products as quickly as possible, this is bad news. Because what Josh is saying is that the sellers who are putting in skill and will, was how he put it, skill to create something unique that's going to bring value to the marketplace rather than just trying to generate as many random images and slap them on as many t-shirts as possible. He is specifically saying that the sellers who are putting in that work are the ones that Etsy wants to highlight.
They're the ones they're going to prioritize.
And this is the reason why I think so many sellers are being deactivated for small violations. Like Mark said previously, it's not that, Etsy isn't aware that there are bugs with this system, but right now, if any rule is broken, there is not a human who's reviewing it. It is a robot that's saying, okay, it doesn't matter if it's a big rule or a small rule. A rule has been broken, bam, that's it.
Said and done.
Because it's a robot and it doesn't have the ability to see context. Now, what we're pushing for is for the second, part, the appeal process, to have more human intervention, because it says that they're reviewed by humans and your email has a random name attached to it. My name is blah, 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 and I have reviewed your...
Yeah, when you get that reply less than a minute after your appeal is submitted.
BS.
Yeah, I call absolute BS to that. And unfortunately, this is good for the platform because while the occasional innocent will get nixed, it's going to probably nix a lot more people who shouldn't be on the platform as well.
Right.
And our number one request, and my boy Josh, if you're watching here, the one thing that makes this easier for everybody, tell them what rule they broke.
Exactly.
That's it. That's all you have to do. Say this rule, or it doesn't even have to be the specific rule. You can tell them the section if you want to. If you don't want the legal implication of all of this, tell them what section of rule they broke. Across the board, that's it. If your robot can use a rule to delete somebody, it can use the rule to tell them what rule they broke. It's that simple.
Right. And have an appeal to that. You know what rule that you broke. And if you know you didn't actually break that rule, you can directly appeal that rule with the evidence.
You can also have different sections have different levels of severity. If somebody lapses on a fee, like we've talked about, we know people are getting deactivated for letting their fees go 2 or 3 months. Again, on you for not paying that 50-cent fee that you should have paid. However, that's a dramatically different thing than somebody having an IP violation or violating like the not safe for work policies or something that could like actually get the platform in trouble. You're not getting in trouble for missing out on 45 cents for 3 months.
Exactly.
You are getting in trouble for somebody posting a nude picture and not having it covered and somebody's kid seeing it. You know what I mean? Like there can be different levels of severity. The only difference is you need to tell people what rule they broke. You used to tell people what rule they broke. Start telling people what rule they broke. That would solve like 90% of your customer service problems. All these people that are like, I didn't do nothing wrong. They'll shut up because they know that they did something wrong.
The early results from having just a small fee of $15 to set up a shop on Etsy. If you're not prepared to invest $15 to get your shop going on Etsy, you may not have the skill or the will to really succeed. So we're seeing that little bit of a speed bump be helpful. We usually have thousands, and in fact, often tens of thousands of relevant results. And the first page of search results might be 30 things that look very, very similar. And to a buyer, that's just a lot of cognitive load. If these 30 things are virtually identical, can't you just tell me which one's the best? Or what are the three and what are the trade-offs between them? And that's harder for us where we don't map to a catalog. But I think with the latest machine learning and Gen AI techniques, it's easier and easier for us to start to understand what the stuff is, what's very substantially similar, and really try to give you fewer choices of just the best. And in doing that, offer a lot more diversity as well. Instead of 30 really similar versions, we can offer much more different things. And that can also help buyers to understand the breadth of offerings that we have on Etsy. So not only might they have a more satisfying purchase experience this time, but they'll come back more often because they realize the breadth of offering we have.
This is
my biggest thing. This is my biggest hope for the platform, is that they use machine learning to help filter out the garbage. It sounds very much like that's what they're going to be doing, and I can almost bet that they're referring very hard on the POD side with this, with all of the sellers that go buy the exact same Creative Fabrica design, change the colors on it, and then upload it, and then you search for a Yes Bay shirt and it's literally 30 of the same design, and until you get to page 4 it's the same exact models on the same shirts with the same backdrops with the same designs. And I'm hoping they stick to their guns with this, because this is something that could really declutter the platform specifically for people who actually put in the work and do the hard thing. There's a lot of you guys out there that do POD that really put the work in and don't see a lot of result because you're stuck behind Mr. or Mrs. Instagram influencer who sells all the same Creative Fabrica garbage as everybody else, and their stuff saturates page 1 through 5. And there's nothing you can currently do about that because they have an offsite audience or whatever. And we see that in a lot of different industries where it's usually an influencer or somebody who's been on the platform for 10 or 15 years, who started out doing, you know, the real thing and then moved on to doing the easy thing to increase their output and their actual income over time. Right. And I'm really, if they can stick to this and they can train their machine learning well enough, hopefully they can actually curate, because they already have like the advertised at the top. You know, when you search for something, maybe they can have a Etsy's best picks, like the top 4 listings that they think based on your relevance and your locational data and all the other things that they already factor in. Maybe they can utilize that a little bit more, right, including maybe your shopping habits or you know.
I do want to point out though, because not everybody will have watched the Friday Bean,
mm-hmm.
and I know we're going to get the Creative Fabrica comments.
I hadn't even thought of that.
Yeah, when we had our 300 sellers email us about their shop deactivations, something that we noticed with the POD category in particular were sellers utilizing mockups that didn't come direct from their POD provider, yep. Mockups purchased on Etsy and mockups purchased through Placeit. That seemed to be a huge issue with their shops getting suspended. We can't speak on behalf of that. I asked Etsy's head of customer support. He dodged the question, but that was just something that we noticed. The other thing, though, that we noticed was sellers who had bought designs on Creative Fabrica, did not add any alterations to those designs, just uploaded them all, you know, just as is onto t-shirts, onto tumblers, and so on.
Which, according to their policies, while not specifically listed as an issue, it kind of is, because Etsy specifically states that it needs to be a design of your creation. Purchasing it on Creative Fabrica and sticking somebody's name on it is not your original creation. Now, you could argue that that falls under the customization category, and that works if you're doing like sports jerseys and stuff like that. However, if you're just buying a design, doing nothing to it, and sticking it on a shirt, technically this violates Etsy's policy for handmade items. It's not directly, it doesn't directly say you can't buy a design and stick it here, but what it does say is that the design needs to be yours. It needs to be your original design. Now, if you're on, say, Canva and you're utilizing multiple elements, customizing them, putting them together and putting them on a shirt, that's not the same thing. You're altering it. You're using your brain. You're using your creative power.
Well,
you're coming up with something.
You have to think about how the robot is seeing it. The robot that is looking at our photos is going to see identical background. So there's the issue with the mock-ups. You know, they're seeing the same background, same girl. They're not looking at the 2% of the image that is the design on the shirt. They're looking at the background. They're looking at the girl. They're looking at the bed that she's sitting on. They're looking at her pose. And they're saying, wow, 600 sellers are all using this. That means this is an identical item. So there's that aspect. But then there's also the aspect of sellers who are utilizing the same creative Fabrica design on a t-shirt. Okay, we're seeing this design on this shirt, this tumbler, this, and this. These are all identical. There's no way that the seller designed this themselves. This violates the Handmade policy.
Some of the fraud that was created and poor behavior from like non-compliant merchants could be actually like a gross margin headwind last year. So just curious, as you work through this process, if this could be a tailwind to gross margins as you get some of the non-compliant sellers off who like maybe elevated levels of returns that are like outside of Etsy's protection program.
Yeah. So in terms of gross margins, possibly, yes. And in particular, it may not be non-compliant, meaning sellers that are not handmade, but just sellers that have higher levels of refunds or consistently ship late. Within the quality initiative, when we say we don't want to just get you to a product you're going to buy, but to a purchase experience you're going to love, how do we have the search engine explicitly favor sellers that consistently ship on time, that consistently get 5-star reviews, that very rarely get returns?
Basically, what the investor is asking is, will eliminating the sellers that shouldn't be on the platform help Etsy overall? Because a lot of you guys say, well, Etsy would never remove these sellers. They're making money off of them. Yes, but it leads to Etsy buyers having less trust and not wanting to come back.
Seller distrust.
Etsy buyers requesting refunds. And overall, these things do negatively impact Etsy. So Josh is talking about it not just in terms of the sellers who are being, removed for selling things that they shouldn't be, but also in terms of elevating the sellers who are doing all the right things. And this is something that Etsy's always done when we talk about listing quality scores, customer and marketplace experience scores. This is Etsy ranking sellers higher in search who have good reviews, who have, they don't have any issues in terms of copyright infringement cases against them.
They ship on time.
All of these positive factors that tell Etsy that this is a good seller who's following all the rules. Now, when you're brand new, obviously you don't have any history that can help to boost those listings up in search. So we thankfully get a small boost in search when we list something new on Etsy. There's a short boost window where Etsy really uses that as an opportunity to analyze how shoppers interact with that listing in order to decide where in search that listing needs to go, which is exactly why we say don't tinker with your Etsy SEO every single day. Etsy needs that time to determine what this listing is, the types of people who are engaging with that listing, and who they should be showing that listing to. It's not just about keywords. There's so much more there.
And I think it's really important to pay special attention to this because he is speaking on prioritizing this, prioritizing the buyer experience, not just getting to a shop and it's pretty and it's got a nice banner and all the listings look good. Obviously, that's important. But he's also speaking about the overall purchase experience for the customer. It can't just end with you making your storefront look good. Your products have to be good. They have to be shipped within a reasonable time frame. You can't have a bunch of people refunding products to your shop. It's the overall experience that makes it important, where we get into things like packaging and what the interpretation is of the product before they even see it. When they open that box or they open that package, they get your gift card, they get your little freebie if you give a freebie, or your coupon, or whatever it is. The overall buyer experience is going to matter significantly more. And while it already, pays in to the score for your listings in your shop, with them using machine learning and it getting smarter and smarter and smarter and smarter, it's going to be able to take that overall experience and pair that with a good looking shop and a well filled out shop with good listings and good pictures and all of these different things, and use it to build what I'm assuming is basically a profile to compare you against your competitors and everybody else who's already on the platform who's also being rated at the same time. So making sure that you optimize yourself, not just in what you look like, but how you deliver that experience to your customer is going to start mattering a lot more. And he just reiterated that point like 4 times throughout the presentation. So
right. And you have time to do this now. You have time, especially while they are, if they're doing things on the back end to change the algorithm or how sellers are ranked in search. That means that right now is the very best time to start pivoting, analyzing your policies, looking at weak points within your own business.
Do you have are you doing shop updates? Do you have your FAQs filled out? Like, there are so many parts of shops that we see just completely left empty. If there's a part there that you can fill out, it should be filled out. Anything that you can give this non-person looking at your shop that's taking all of these factors into consideration, the better. Get everything filled out and get it optimized the best that you can. Again, look up Christina Nicole, Christina Nicole here on YouTube. She'll teach you how to take good pictures of your photos, or good pictures of your photo, good pictures of your listings, and get your shop ready for whatever optimizations they're going to be making. As of right now, photos don't matter that much unless you're trying to rank on Google, other than just making sure that people can understand what they're looking at, when they click on your listing. But now, if there's going to be machine learning looking at your listings, it's going to matter a lot more that your pictures are clear and concise, and it's able to tell what in the heck it's looking at.
Exactly. And down below as well, my free Etsy SEO toolbox is linked down there. If you guys want to check that out, that's going to help you to optimize for the 7 factors that contribute to Etsy's algorithm. Those 7 factors that, based on what Josh is saying, are going to still be the foundation of the algorithm. I don't hear a lot of change in terms of the algorithm aside from the photo aspect and making sure your photos are good. Everything else that he's talking about, the reviews and a seamless customer experience, those are all things that are already factored into the algorithm. It's just most sellers don't realize that there's more to it than just keywords.
What I was specifically referring to in my comments was doing an even better job taking not handmade items off the site. And I know you've been talking about that with us, and we couldn't agree more that it's really important that Etsy be Etsy. And there's new technologies out there that make it easier and easier to spot. For example, does this same item exist also on AliExpress? And we assume right now, if that item exists on AliExpress, we assume it's mass produced and we take it down. You as the seller can appeal that. You can tell us how you made it yourself and it still ended up on AliExpress. And by the way, that's true sometimes. You can appeal that, but our default now is we take that down.
Basically, what Josh is saying is that if your items are also on sites like AliExpress, Alibaba, Temu, these common sites that we see drop shipping, Etsy's first action is going to be to take those listings down. And then you have the ability to appeal and say, well, I had the original one. We have seen flaws in the system.
And there will always be flaws in this system.
We have had sellers who make handmade items. Their photos have been stolen, and they have submitted to Etsy their proof, their evidence that they are the original creators of these items, and they have still been rejected. We have seen that happen, and it really sucks.
However, a lot of the people who say this, who are the loudest, of course, are liars. We know that for a fact. We've seen it firsthand.
Yeah.
A lot of the people who said, oh, they found my listings on Alibaba, AliExpress, whatever. So yeah, we found your listing on Alibaba and AliExpress. We also found it on 50 other websites that have absolutely no connection, some in Europe, some in Asia, some in all over the place, with photos that were in addition to the photos that you had taken, with additional backgrounds and backdrops and different information on the listings that you didn't even include. And he likes to talk real fast and say things like, if we see it on AliExpress, we take it down. I want to try to maybe give him some benefit of the doubt that they don't just single platform takedown on stuff like that. I'm assuming they probably have some way of checking multiple platforms all at the same time. Because if they're looking at AliExpress and Alibaba and all these different sites, they're probably looking at all of them simultaneously. You know, your photo being on one website, probably not that big of a deal. Your photo being on 7, 8, 9 different websites starts to look a little sus.
Right. And I did have a lot of sellers ask me, you know, I sell on my own website. Are my items safe if Etsy is taking down listings that are found elsewhere? The answer to that is no. Etsy doesn't have a monopoly over your items. We can assume that Etsy is not looking at individual user websites.
No, they're not looking at the whole of the internet. If anything, they probably have a database that they reference that's constantly looking at different, probably mostly Chinese distributors, Temu, Alibaba, AliExpress, maybe eBay, probably not Amazon, because Amazon's got Amazon Handmade. They're probably not looking at Amazon. I would say the big 5 Chinese distributors.
Mm-hmm. Key things that I took from this investors report are that Etsy sales are down, and they're probably going to stay down for a little while. However, Etsy's investing a lot of money and a lot of engineering into enhancing the experience on the platform and outreach to new potential buyers, or bringing past buyers back to the platform in order to restore a bit of trust with Etsy. They're going to get stricter than ever with enforcing their policies, which is why right now is an amazing time to run through the Etsy policies and scour them, read them, because I could make a video about it, but it would make so much more sense for you guys to just go read them yourselves, because there's no additional value that I'm going to be able to add to those written policies. So I will have those linked down below for you so you can start examining them. Because really, if we're thinking in terms of a robot, like Mark said, there's not going to be nuance. There's not going to be context.
At least not enough that you'll notice it.
Exactly. Whatever that rule states, don't assume that there's wiggle room. Assume that the rule is black and white, and follow it to the best of your abilities.
Which is fair. Really, when you say you want Etsy to be fair, that's fair. And when you're talking about millions of people, it is unreasonable and unrealistic to expect them to do anything else other than enforce equally across the board, regardless of the violation. Of course, like we said earlier, there could be ways of treating violations based on severity, which hopefully they work towards.
Which we're fighting towards.
Which we are fighting towards. Again, our one goal really is to just make it known what people were doing. Yeah, why was I deactivated? What rule did I violate? You can tell that they understand that it's both that as a problem. They don't usually acknowledge that much in the investors reports. They very much acknowledge the fact that they know people who shouldn't be on Etsy aren't there. And obviously they have to word it very particularly, because when you're talking to investors, you're talking about removing people that actually contribute to the income of the platform. So they have to be careful. But they're also hopeful that the innovations, and we can call them innovations because what Etsy's doing is very different from everyone else, are going to contribute more towards both a better seller experience, but more importantly, really, a better buyer experience, to be able to find products that they might not necessarily have been there, which could help with especially our super duper niche people who have really unique products, who deserve more appeal from the system. They deserve
more
to be put
exposure.
Yeah.
Well, guys, thanks so much for watching this video. Make sure that you check the link down below for the full Friday Bean episode, where we go even more in depth into what we have observed through our own research of those 300 suspended sellers, as well as a little bit more of a deep dive into some of the things that Josh spoke about. And if you guys have any questions for us, make sure that you join us this Friday at noon Eastern, 11 a.m. Central, 9 a.m. Pacific, and 5 p.m. if you are in the UK, to ask us questions during the Friday Bean.
Are we cueing a lo-fi beat?
Is it a happy topic?
I think it's a happy topic.
Let's cue the monotone beat.